So my name is Bhairav Patel, as sorry I mentioned. I'm the co-founder and virtual CTO at Atom CTO. And I'm going to be talking to you about building your technology strategy. So let me give you a little bit about myself and what we do. So we formed Atom CTO in 2017 to provide virtual CTO services to entrepreneurs, founders, and small business owners. So what does virtual CTO services mean? I guess we've all been in the technology industry for the past 20 years, and most of us all work together. And what we found over the years when we were actually advising, when we were working in the IT industry, we were also advising small startups and businesses on the side. And what we saw was that the kind of level of advice given out to businesses was very varied. And what we want to do with Atom CTO is work on behalf of the business to provide good technology, strategic technology advice to small businesses. So we work not only to help you devise an IT strategy, develop a product roadmap, but also the operations around it. So you need to build the teams to support it, and how you'll actually support, let's say, infrastructure and actually whatever the applications and that you're looking to build. We also have our own team that builds platforms, and we work across many sectors. So at the moment, we've got projects in ed tech, health tech, sports tech, pretty much all the techs you can imagine. So we're sector agnostic, and we tend to focus on technology solutions that are right for the business. About myself, I joined PwC back in 1999, then worked for IBM, and I left the UK, I guess, in about 1999, and worked abroad for a number of different companies. Some of them were large telcos, some were startups that actually went abroad and multinational. One of the larger ones I worked for was a fintech based in Dublin that then went multinational in 2013, and I worked there until 2017. I also have a podcast, which you may find interesting, which is talking to various business leaders and entrepreneurs. They talk about their own projects, their own businesses, and their journey into starting their own thing. So just to start off, so one thing that I've seen as I've been the CTO of businesses over the years is that when I walk into those companies, people see technology really as a big black hole where you push your money into and don't see many results. And what I've always tried to do when I talk to business owners is to say that technology isn't just something you spend your money on, but can be a driver for growth. And really, whether it's you looking to enter new territories, streamline business process, cut costs, technology should be seen as an investment with a return on investment. So you're looking not at just I've got a website and then leave it there. You need to actually think about what it is it's trying to achieve and really measure that impact it has. So before, when we first start the conversations with business leaders and talk to them about the strategy that we want to build, there's a lot of work we do which is not really related to technology at all. So there are certain prerequisites that we feel need to be in place before you want to start thinking about your tech strategy. And one of the biggest ones is ensuring that you have a clear business strategy. So once you understand what you want to do with your business, then the technology is there to support that. So really, technology is one of the tools in your toolbox alongside marketing, customer service, etc., that can help your business progress. And if you don't have a clear idea of what your business goals are, then it's very difficult to create a tech strategy around that. So for example, whether it's going into a new territory, whether you want a new channel for sales, even in remote working, you need to understand what are you trying to achieve with that in order for us to be able to help you understand what is the right technology strategy. Then you obviously need to look at measuring the impact of that technology strategy and understanding what success looks like to you. So just putting a website up isn't necessarily the success that you need, or an e-commerce platform. You need to understand, okay, how many sales do we need to drive through that? Are we looking at that as the main focus for our customers? Is that the main face for our business? One thing that I find very important, which often people don't really come to us with a clear idea of, is how much you want to spend. Now, most of the time people come to us and say, well, how much is it? And that's not really the kind of answer to the question that we're looking for. Each business is individual, and you'll need to understand what is your appetite for spend within that, because ultimately, tech solutions can be fitted around whatever your budget is. We just need to understand what ballpark figure so that you can decide on what is the best strategy for you for the money that you've got available. You also need to think about the pain points that you're trying to alleviate, if there are any within the business. It may not well be that you don't have any pain points and you're just looking to enter new markets, but really you've got to think about what are you really trying to achieve? And again, that moves back into the measurement piece. Then the last couple of points are around business resilience and continuity. So they're not exactly the same thing. Obviously, business continuity in this COVID era, many people have talked about it. How do you carry on running your business through something like this? And obviously, technology can help that. So we can enable new channels. Obviously, Zoom is a great way of business continuity internally within teams, or even reaching out for sales, etc. But business resilience is something different. And what we try to emphasize to our clients is that, in order for us to create a good tech strategy, we need to understand what are the risks within your business. So what are the business risks that we need to protect from a technology perspective? So for example, we work with an ed tech client at the moment, and they are very much emphasizing their ability to provide secure tutoring to people's children. So we therefore, because that is a big key element within their business, we know that data security and obviously vetting the tutors and all those kinds of things are very, very important to the business. Because if you sell yourself as a business that is tight on security, and you don't have anything in place or any plan in place if something does go wrong, then we can't. Then obviously you're going to be found out very, very quickly. And so for us, when we build that technology strategy, we want to understand what are the additional bits within your business that we need to protect, and we need to find then solutions on how to protect them. So moving into the designing of the technology strategy, what I've done here is a diagram that basically it's something called the Zachman framework, and it's actually used when you're creating complex IT systems. And what we've done over the years is that we've taken this methodology and adapted it for more business and a technology strategy type implementation. So there are a number of questions you need to ask yourself when you're developing a strategy. So they are what are you doing? How are you doing it? Where are you doing it? When are you doing it? And why are you doing it? And then the question is, who's actually doing it? So then you've got a number of different stakeholders within the business that will be doing these things. So you obviously have employees, you have your vendors, your suppliers, your customers. You may also have shareholders or donors. For example, we're working with a charity at the moment, and we need to, as when we're going through this process, we need to understand, what do their donors need to see? What are when they're doing fundraising, etc. So diving in a little bit into this is that, let's say, for example, you want to launch a new website for your business, a new e-commerce platform. So the question is, okay, what is it? What will it sell? So will it sell all of your products? Will it sell some of your products? How will it sell it? So are we looking at this being more of a desktop application or a mobile application? How do you want to reach your customers? And where are your customers? So are your customers, are they a hybrid? Are they online and offline? Are they based in different locations? And the reason we need to know something like this is so that we can build infrastructure around that. So for example, if you have a technology strategy where your customers are in multiple different countries, we may need to look at, rather than having your own server base, we may need to look at cloud solution there. When are your users, when are your customers going to be reaching your website? So again, this is an interesting one from my e-commerce days when I was working as a CTO for a large e-commerce business. Most of the customers and most of the revenue was generated on a Sunday evening. It was an online auction site, and essentially we would have our peak around Sunday evening. So what we need to do from a technology strategy and technology perspective is to understand, okay, we know that most of our revenue is generated towards Christmas and then on Sundays. So during the year, mostly on Sundays, and in the last 3 months of the year is when we have the greatest boost in revenue, because it was a seasonal business as well. So therefore, infrastructure needs to be in place to support that. So we need to ensure that there's enough capacity within the infrastructure to allow for additional loads coming on, but also the support needs to be there. So what happens if something goes wrong at any one of these points in time? And believe me, when something goes wrong on a Sunday at 10 o'clock in the evening, you don't want to be scrambling around trying to call your team to get them in place. So you need to have that already there. And maybe then other days during the week when things are less busy, that they have their time off. And then why are you doing it? So again, this goes back to the business goals. So for example, in the e-commerce example, if you're looking to create a new website, what is your differentiator in that sense? Of course, one thing may be the product, but why are they doing it? They may be doing it because it's easier for them to buy online. So therefore, when you're actually designing the applications that will support this, you need to ensure that time to buy, the ease of buying, is something that's very core and fundamental to what you're building. So moving on, that whole process of understanding your business goals and then understanding who's going to be involved in the actual what you're actually trying to do and who you're actually doing it for, that gives you your strategy. So then you obviously need to execute that strategy. And again, taking lessons from what we've seen when we're talking to businesses, there are certain do's and don'ts of executing the strategy. And this is where we get a few war stories that come through from some of our clients. So for example, you do need to seek out a sounding board or a second opinion. So for example, if you are let's say entering a new market, like you want to expand out into the US or into Europe, and you've got a strategy in place that you think is worthwhile and it's actually going to work. Now, go find someone who's done something similar. Make sure that what you're doing is sensible and that you have someone there who's maybe been through some of the pains and can then point them out to you. So it may seem obvious, but a lot of times people feel that once they've come up with a strategy, it's amazing and we've got to go out for it, and don't really seek the advice to kind of understand, okay, what have we not seen? What are the unknown unknowns that we have out there? Do document what you want clearly. Now, again, when people approach us, they don't really have a sense. They have an idea of what they're trying to achieve, but they don't know how they want to achieve it. So from our perspective, what we do and what we're heavy on is developing, project brief documentation, roadmap documentations, all these kinds of things that give you an outline so that everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet, essentially. So if you have a set of documentation that people can read, everyone knows what they need to do. So you're not in a situation where there's doubt or scope creep that comes on when you're executing strategy simply because people didn't or misunderstood what was meant to be happening. Ensure that you involve your team during the execution. So a lot of what we see is that leadership can come into a business and try to impose the strategy on the rest of the team, so that when you're actually delivering a solution, people feel resentful simply because they weren't part of that process. And so, things break down quite quickly simply because people don't support that platform as well as they could do. And I think a lot of what we do when we work with businesses ensure that everyone who's going to be the end user for this platform is involved in it, so that they understand what is coming further down the line, but also they can give their feedback from the trenches as to what is actually what are the real problems. So realistic timelines. One of the other things that we tend to find is people come to us and they say, I need something done in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and that's not very realistic, because it takes a set amount of time to go through contracts, hire vendors, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to have realistic timelines and ensure that you're thinking about this from as early as possible. So when you're looking at your business strategy, you should be looking at your IT strategy at the same time. And also, not everything goes to plan. So you need to make sure that you build in some sort of contingency, or there is a backup plan if, for example, let's say a website isn't delivered on time. So what can you do what can the business do, which again goes back to business continuity? What can you do if there's that thing that you're expecting in place isn't in place? Will the business actually keep going? Can you keep it going without that? The legal advice, again, is a very, very important one. We had a client recently that we were asked to do some code reviews for the platform, because they wanted to make sure that what was built was correct and that it could scale. And what we found during that process is they didn't actually own any of the code base. So they'd spent a lot of money, but all the IP and the rights were sitting with the business to developing. So you really need to make sure that whenever you sign something, there's some legal advice that's in there. And again, compliance, all of these things need to be looked at before you actually start engaging with anyone. And reference checking. Reference checking it sounds very obvious, but not many people do that. When they put out tenders, they tend to just look at the pricing and look at the time and then just go for it. Whereas what you really want to do is make sure that you talk to someone where they've delivered a project and understand, can these people deliver? What support do they give? How innovative is their thinking? Will they just do what's there on the piece of paper, or will they actually engage with you to find better solutions? And to that, don't think of strategy as something that's set in stone. Really, when you're developing a tech strategy, as I said, it does need to sit hand in hand with the business strategy, and business priorities change. What you're doing in month 1 may not be the same thing as you're doing in month 24 or even in month 3, as we've seen in many instances. So you've got to make sure that the IT is flexible and can move in the same way and be as flexible and as agile as your business is and needs to be. So I hope that's given you it's been a quick introduction, but I hope it's a good introduction of how you can build a technology strategy. If there's anyone out there who needs additional advice or help, then feel free to reach out to myself via the website, atomcto.com, or bhairav@atomcto.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Bhairav. That was excellent and very detailed, I have to say. A lot of work to be done for some companies. Just a quick question for you there. If you are maybe a smaller type of company that maybe wouldn't have this much infrastructure or so on in play, what would you suggest for them? Because, I mean, what you've described there was very, very detailed. I mean, is there a shorter version of that would be?
So a lot of people that come to us are very small with an initial idea, but it's not necessarily the fact that you need to go into every single area in detail, but you need to have them in mind. So the way that we always say is that if this is the first thing that you're trying to do and you're looking to invest a significant amount of your money into it, you need to have a little bit of thought process in there. So we need to understand, okay, do you know what your business strategy is? Because if you don't know that, then it's very hard to then put a technology strategy involved. So it really, the kind of the ways to shortcut that are to think, okay, what do I want to achieve in my business? What do I need to protect in my business?
Mm.
and what are the actual how am I going to measure that this implementing this website was worth the money? And I think that's really it. And then when you get into the who, what, where, why, when, and how, that is actually something that you should already know anyway. That shouldn't be too difficult for you to come up with, simply because you wouldn't be doing what you're doing in the business if you didn't know how you were selling it, or where you were selling it, or why you were selling it. So I think no matter big or small, we try to get people focused on at least the framework. So they may not pick out everything within the framework, but at least understand that all of these things need to be thought about. Because yes, I agree, it is a lot to think about, but then you're spending some money, whether that is £1,000 or £10,000, it's still a significant amount of money for you, right?
Right.
And so you need to think about it that way.
Right.
Cool. Terrain, there's
Yeah,
a question
and
here
just
that's come through from Stana. And Stana asked, for small businesses, doesn't it make sense or more sense for people to use the cloud solutions?
It definitely does. But again, it goes back to, there are many. So for example, if you're doing e-commerce, you've got Magentos, you've got Shopify, you've got a whole bunch of the other ones out there. So really, it goes back to what I was saying. So, looking at if that site goes down. So what's the business resilience? What is the actual SLAs for that company? What is the costing? Can it do all of the things that you want to do? So if you want to stand out, do those platforms allow you the ability to stand out from the rest of the thousands of companies that are built on the same platforms? Are they compliant with
freedom?
Yes. So, and it's all the same. You still have to think of the same things when you want to implement an off-the-shelf product. And a lot of what we do is not necessarily building things from scratch. We look at what's out there in the market, but there's a reason why you have 15 different CRM systems, and that you have 3 or 4 major online e-commerce businesses and platforms, because Shopify may not be it might be Amazon that is better for you, because that's where the people are at, and that's a better cost, and it needs to streamline. So again, that technology strategy needs to sit with that business strategy.
Right. And actually, Bhairav, just a question as well. I find that a lot of small businesses, when they're looking at looking for growth, and they're in business at the beginning, they're loath to spend a lot of money on technology, and almost feel like they want the business to prove itself before they invest in the technology. And I tried to talk to them around, actually, if they invest and create solid foundations, they're going to be in a better position for growth. So just in terms of the question here is, with the technology that somebody puts in place in their business, how often do people need to review that technology to see whether or not it's fit for purpose, and if it's actually going to help them to build and scale to where they want to get to?
So I'll touch on another point and then answer that point as well. So what's interesting here is that whenever we talk to a small business or startup, we ask, can you do it on paper, right? And if you can do it on paper, then of course you can translate that onto an IT platform. But how do you know that what you're doing right now is what you're going to be doing in 6 months' time? So for example, we've for an e-invoicing financing company, we've built their platform, and originally we said a lot of the back-end process can be done on spreadsheets. So do them on the spreadsheets, see what the first 6 months goes, how that goes, and then invest in automating the technology. Because until there's no point in spending the money in setting yourself up with these rigid processes when you don't know how that's going to play out. And I think moving on from that, you do need to review what you're doing within technology. But again, it should be obvious as your business grows whether that technology is actually growing with you and supporting that, right? So I think yes, you do. I don't think you need to sit there and start thinking about the newest technologies. You don't have to replace stuff simply because it's not as shiny as it was before, but you need to obviously understand, is it scaling? And that's the kind of thing that we try to help you with, to understand what to put in place.
Yeah. And tell me something. I mean, look, again, a lot of these guys are a little bit smaller than, they don't have a massive budget. So if they were looking today to take their products and to go online, what would be a reasonable budget for them to look at, so that it's a good platform, it's stable? Now, I'm not talking about some sort of a monolith here. I'm talking about sort of like maybe using the Shopify's or one of these kind of guys. I mean, what would you suggest?
So Shopify is easy. Shopify and Magento and those, because their models are pretty set, right? So then you've got to understand, will I be able to sell enough product to create a good profit margin? Similarly with things like Salesforce, again, because they're subscription based mostly, and some other e-commerce sites have some sort of order revenue share as well. It's kind of easy to factor in. So it becomes less of a technology decision to more of a business decision. I think when you're looking to invest in let's say, for example, you want to build your own website, then again, there's lots of different ways and means of doing it at different price points. So it goes back to what I was saying on one of the earlier slides, is that you've got to know, rather than coming to us with a budget, is how much can you afford to spend? That's the key, because there's always a way of doing things within the budget, right? Because we can, like, we've built, for example, I've, done design and build websites for £10,000. I've built them for hundreds of thousands of pounds, right? So or even £1,000. So it really depends on what your appetite is, and we can just find the resources and the way forward for you.
And Bhairav, just actually with that in relation to, I guess, the cost piece around this, that we've seen that with legal advice, with HR advice, with accounting advice, we tend to pay retainers, for those services. What's happening in the tech field? Is there kind of a retainer model out there at the moment with tech firms?
So obviously we're doing that with Atom. So that's one of the things. So you don't tend to see so much of that in this world. So Atom kind of slots into kind of a gap in the market, in the sense that what you have out there, you have a lot of development companies that will go and build websites, build platforms, build mobile apps. And then you've got some consultants, business advisors, but you don't really have that tech piece in the middle, which is where we come in. And so we essentially, for some companies, we're just essentially their non-exec directors. So it's not a huge amount of money you need to pay per month to have someone on there, but it doesn't always make sense to have that person unless you're dedicating to a long-term tech strategy, right?
Sure.
And I haven't come across many people doing any kind of retainer model in this industry, because usually it's project-based, but we are starting that.
Okay, cool.
That's
and I guess as well,
enough.
the point on that I find, I get lots of business owners that are looking to do a project, and they're looking to go overseas to get the development done because it's cheaper. And I guess I've found a number of businesses that I've seen and have done this and tried to do this, that it's gone south. It's not gone very well for them because of for whatever reason. So what's your view on going offshore, going to another kind of lower cost center to get development work done?
So it's funny that you say that, because I've just released a podcast on that. So if you go to the Atom CTO.com site, there's a podcast bit, and we actually have links to the Atom Ventures podcast, as I had on the
brilliant
slide. But generally, it all going offshore is great for ensuring that for price reasons, right? One of the key things you need to understand, though, when you're doing an offshore model, is that you need to have an organization on your side that can handle the communications with those guys. You shouldn't really incorporate a offshore model unless you're willing to put the time and effort in to manage those teams. And because it's for many different reasons, and I've offshored in many different countries, there's always that bridge that you need to have between your expectations and what they can deliver, and you need to constantly be in communication with them around that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bhairav. I'll leave you in peace. Thank you so much.
Well, you might, but I won't. I have more. I have more. And actually, just a point there that Sana had made, if you haven't seen it on sort of the costing side of things, she's talking about a platform here. I'm not sure which one it is. That 35 quid a month plus VAT will give you a storefront with up to 1,000 products, which I think will take place of most people. And I think what she's saying is that you can integrate blue car commerce. There you are. But you can integrate that with your actual website. I think sometimes that's a little bit easier, just to take sort of a plug and play type of thing and put it on. Because you can just use their systems, and it's a question, I guess, of just getting used to how it is that they're actually working.
And there's loads of those, right? Yeah, there's loads of those. You've got WooCommerce, you've got NotCommerce, you've got so there's lots of those plugins. So again, it goes back down to what you really need.
Yeah, exactly. And because there are so many of these guys out there, is there, I guess if you look up reviews and stuff like that, but is there some sort of like a comparison? Because like when somebody looks at these things and they're not particularly techie, and they see a lot of stuff about JavaScript and CSS and all this kind of stuff, and it kind of blows their head off because they're like, I have no idea what any of that means. So is there like a simple way to figure it out, or is it just a question of reviewing each one separately?
Yeah, that's something that we've had to do actually with clients, and there are so many out there that it's kind of hard, right? Because there are obviously the compare websites and you can read reviews, but again, it's going back to knowing what you want to achieve, right? And so what are the kind of facets? Is it, so in this example, 1,000 products, you have 5,000 products. So, obviously then you can rule out certain things. So the only way to kind of break it down is to understand what your requirements are, and then start breaking it down and then whittling it down to 2 or 3. So for example, online chat, if you want to incorporate chat into your website, there's 30 different tools to do that.
Yeah, like the pure chat and those kind of guys.
Loads of them, and some are free and some are not. And so the thing is, it's a question of, okay, which one is the easiest to use? What do you have, what level of technology expertise do you have in the house? Can you, for example, for us, we need to schedule chat. So they're only online at certain times. Some do it, some don't. So all of those things are the things that you need to figure out. What do you want from this product? And then go out and select a few and then go and decide on which one's the best for your price and skill level.
Yeah, because I've often found that the actual research stage of figuring out what type of software or platforms to use could be one of the longest stages.
It is.
You know,
But
so,
again, it's one of those things that I always use the analogy of house building or buying, right? You don't go and buy the first house that you see on the road, right? You spend some time thinking about where you want to live, schools, all these different things. And that's the same thing with.
Funny enough with houses though, you do only get 5 minutes to view them. And then
True.
the estate agent is like, buy, buy, buy. I think it's funny with one of the biggest purchases you'll ever make in your life, you get the least amount of time, I think, to actually sort of review it. You know, we probably do more research on a platform than you do on your house.
Yeah, true.
Sorry, just a minor point there. So look, one more question that I have for you here, because again, we're talking a lot about sort of platforms, and of course, over the last number of years, apps have been a really big thing. So, you know, are apps still, number one, a big thing for people to build? And do you recommend people that they build their own app, or is it better just to have more like a responsive website?
Well, we usually say build a responsive website to begin with, right? Because there's always that cost element of building an application, especially if you're going to go native. So if you're actually going to build iOS and Android apps, then that's a whole new ball game.
Yeah.
And what you got to think about there is that if you already have a website, make it responsive first, see what traffic you're getting from the mobile website. And then you got to ask yourself, is there anything in addition that I can offer on that in an app format that I wouldn't get through an HTML5 responsive website? And generally there isn't, right? But sometimes things like if you, for example, with one company that we're dealing with, you know, they've got mapping requirements, and actually mapping is better inbuilt building components into an app rather than trying to do that from the web. And so there's, you know, you got to look at the functionality that you have. If it's a fairly simple site and you're just doing very vanilla things, then oftentimes we just tell people to start off with a responsive website, so then you know whether there's enough demand for you to actually build an app and is there any kind of differentiator? What can you do with the app that you couldn't do on a mobile website?
Right. And I think that's really good advice, because I think a lot of people were like, oh, I got to build this app. And there was lots of people who came out and they said, look, I can build you an app in sort of like 3 or 4 days and all of this kind of stuff. And they were all just very generic.
Yeah. And we with the one thing we always focus on again, and which I tried to stress earlier, is infrastructure and support, right? Every time you spend 5,000 on an app, you're going to have to spend some money in the background to make sure it's up, update it, have some developers to overlook bug fixing and all these kinds of things. So if you don't have the appetite to spend over a long period, then don't do it.
Right. So it's back to the engineering principle, the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. Great. Okay. Well, listen, Bhairav, thank you so much for that. And thank you for letting us throw lots of questions at you as well. So I really appreciate that. Guys, he has his details there. So if you want to get in touch with Bhairav, he's really good at what he does. We know that we've been working with him for many years. So please do get in touch with him. Bhairav, a very big thank you for that. That was really good. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.